Ibrahim Traoré was born on March 14, 1988, in Kera, a small village in Bondoukoui, Mohun Province, Burkina Faso. Growing up in a rural setting, Traoré's early life was shaped by the simplicity and challenges of village life in one of West Africa's poorest nations. Burkina Faso, formerly known as Upper Volta, is a landlocked country with a history of economic hardship and political instability, which likely influenced Traoré's worldview from a young age. His family background remains largely private, as Traoré has shared little about his personal life, a trait that persists in his public persona as a reserved and enigmatic leader. Traoré attended primary school in Bondoukoui, where he was noted for his quiet demeanor and academic promise. His early education laid the foundation for his later intellectual pursuits. After completing primary school, he moved to Bobo-Dioulasso, Burkina Faso's second-largest city, to attend secondary school. Teachers and peers described him as quiet and very talented, indicating a disciplined and focused character even in his youth. Bobo-Dioulasso, a cultural and economic hub, exposed Traoré to a broader urban environment, contrasting with his rural upbringing. In 2006, Traoré enrolled at the University of Ouagadougou, the capital's leading academic institution, where he studied geology. He graduated in 2009 with honors, demonstrating academic excellence and a capacity for rigorous study. His choice of geology as a field of study suggests an early interest in Burkina Faso's natural resources, a theme that would later define his presidency. After completing his degree, Traoré made a pivotal decision to shift from academia to a military career, enrolling in the Burkinabe Army in 2009. This marked the beginning of his transformation from a studious young man to a military leader, and eventually, a national figure. Military career and rise through the ranks. Traoré's military career began at the Georges Namoano Military Academy in Po, where he underwent officer training. Graduating as a second lieutenant in 2012, he quickly distinguished himself as a capable and courageous soldier. His early assignments included anti-aircraft training in Morocco, reflecting his rapid ascent within the Burkinabe armed forces. By 2014, he was promoted to lieutenant, a testament to his leadership and competence. In 2018, Traoré served with the United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali, MINUSMA, a peacekeeping force engaged in the Mali War. Stationed in the volatile Tombouctou region, he earned recognition for his bravery during major rebel attacks, with MINUSMA citing him as one of the soldiers who showed courage under fire. This experience exposed Traoré to the complexities of regional security and the challenges of combating jihadist insurgencies, which would later become central to his leadership in Burkina Faso. Upon returning to Burkina Faso, Traoré was assigned to an infantry unit in Kaya, a town in the north plagued by escalating jihadist violence. He participated in several counterinsurgency operations, including the 2019 Otapuanu offensive and battles in Djibo. These operations were grueling, often conducted with limited resources, as Traoré later recounted his frustration with the Burkinabe military's lack of equipment. He witnessed firsthand the corruption and mismanagement that left soldiers under-equipped, while politicians engaged in bribery and self-enrichment. This disillusionment with the political and military establishment sowed the seeds of his later revolutionary actions. Promoted to captain in 2020 at the age of 32, Traoré's reputation as a frontline leader grew. Some sources, including the BBC and Al Jazeera, suggest he may have been associated with the Cobra Special Forces, a counter-terrorist unit formed in 2019. However, Jeune Afrique disputes this, indicating uncertainty about his exact role within the unit. Regardless, his combat experience and leadership in high-stakes operations earned him respect among his peers and subordinates. Political ascent. The 2022 coup. Burkina Faso's political landscape in the early 2020s was marked by instability, driven by a worsening jihadist insurgency that controlled nearly 40% of the country's territory by 2022. The government of President Roch-Marc Kabore struggled to address the crisis, leading to widespread discontent, In January 2022, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Santiago Damiba led a coup, overthrowing Traoré and establishing the Patriotic Movement for Safeguard and Restoration, MPSR. Traoré, then a captain, supported this coup, reflecting his frustration with the civilian government's inability to manage the security crisis. He was appointed head of an artillery regiment in Kaya, a strategic role in the fight against insurgents. However, Damiba's leadership failed to deliver on promises to curb the insurgency. Traoré and other junior officers grew dissatisfied with Damiba's focus, which they perceived as drifting from security priorities toward personal ambitions. Traoré later stated that he and his colleagues urged Damiba to refocus on the year rebellion, but their pleas were ignored. This led to the planning of a second coup, launched on September 30, 2022, with support from the Cobra unit. Traoré, still a captain, emerged as the leader of the plot, ousting Damiba and assuming the role of interim president and supreme head of the armed forces on October 6, 2022. At 34, he became the world's youngest head of state, a position he has held with a blend of charisma and authoritarian control. Presidency, achievements and reforms. Since taking power, Traoré has pursued an ambitious agenda to transform Burkina Faso, focusing on economic self-reliance, security, and Pan-Africanist ideals. His leadership style, influenced by Marxism and the legacy of Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara, emphasizes sovereignty and resistance to Western influence. Below are his key achievements: economic reforms and resource control. Traoré's administration has prioritized harnessing Burkina Faso's natural resources to drive economic growth. Gold, which accounts for 16% of GDP and 80% of exports, has been a focal point. In 2023, Traoré nationalized 2 gold mines, Boungou and Wagnion, and inaugurated a state-of-the-art gold refinery capable of processing 150 tons annually. He also banned the export of unrefined gold to Europe, aiming to retain more economic value domestically. These moves have been celebrated as steps toward economic sovereignty, though critics note that the nationalization was partly due to a private company's failure to meet financial obligations. Burkina Faso's GDP grew from $18.8 billion in 2022 to $22.1 billion by 2024, reflecting robust economic growth despite security challenges. Traoré rejected loans from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, declaring that Africa doesn't need the World Bank, IMF, Europe, or America. He paid off local debts and reduced the salaries of ministers and parliamentarians by 30%, while increasing civil servants' salaries by 50%. These measures aim to curb corruption and improve living standards for ordinary Burkinabe. Agricultural and industrial development. Recognizing agriculture's role in Burkina Faso's economy, 16.33% of GDP in 2023, Traoré launched the Presidential Lai Initiative for Agricultural Production, 2023-2024, as part of the Offensive Agro-Pastoral and Fisheries Development, 2023-2025. His government provided farmers with 400 tractors, 953 motorcycles, 710 motor pumps, 10,000 tons of fish food, 68,964 tons of fertilizer, and 10,000 liters of agricultural products, valued at 78 billion FCFA. Millet production rose from 907,000 metric tons in 2022 to 1.1 million in 2024, and rice production increased from 280,000 to 326,000 metric tons. Traoré also established 2 tomato processing plants and a second cotton processing plant to boost local industry. Infrastructure projects include the Ouagadougou-Donson Airport and plans for a major Coca-Cola plant, signaling efforts to modernize and diversify the economy. These initiatives reflect Traoré's vision of self-reliance and industrialization, though critics warn of potential inefficiencies in state-owned enterprises. Security and defense. Traoré's presidency has been defined by the ongoing jihadist insurgency, which controls significant portions of Burkina Faso's territory. He created special rapid intervention brigades equipped with advanced gear to combat terrorism. In April 2023, he declared a general mobilization of civilians to support the military, including the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland (VDP). However, reports of forced conscription and human rights abuses by pro-government militias, particularly against Fulani communities, have drawn criticism. Traoré has aligned Burkina Faso with Russia for military support, expelling French forces in February 2023 and withdrawing from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, to form the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, with Mali and Niger. This shift reflects his anti-Western stance but has raised concerns about reliance on Russian influence. Struggles and challenges. Traoré's presidency has not been without significant challenges, both internal and external, security crisis despite. His focus on security. The jihadist insurgency remains a formidable challenge. As of 2025, over 40% of Burkina Faso's territory is under rebel control, with groups affiliated with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda continuing to wage attacks. The conflict has displaced millions, closed thousands of schools and health facilities, and exacerbated a humanitarian crisis. Traoré's strategy of mobilizing civilians and relying on VDP militias has been criticized for fueling ethnic tensions and failing to decisively weaken insurgents. Traoré's regime has faced multiple coup attempts, with reports of at least 1830 assassination plots since 2022. A notable attempt in April 2025 was linked to external actors, with some sources alleging involvement by Ivory Coast, though evidence is inconclusive. These threats underscore the precariousness of his rule and the fragmented state of Burkina Faso's military. Authoritarian measures. Traoré's government has been accused of suppressing dissent, banning foreign media, and jailing journalists who criticize the regime. His indefinite suspension of democratic elections, initially promised for July 2024, has drawn criticism from pro-democracy advocates. The new transition plan suggests he may remain in power until 2029, raising concerns about authoritarianism. International relations. Traoré's anti-Western rhetoric and pivot to Russia have polarized opinions. While his rejection of IMF and World Bank loans resonates with Pan-Africanists, it risks isolating Burkina Faso economically. His withdrawal from ECOWAS and formation of the AES have strained relations with regional neighbors, complicating efforts to address the insurgency collaboratively. Public perception. While Traoré enjoys significant popularity, particularly among youth for his charisma and anti-colonial stance, his support is not universal. Critics argue that his economic achievements are overstated and that poverty remains widespread, with 24.9% of Burkinabe living on less than $2.15 a day in 2024. The violent repression of protests and alleged human rights abuses have alienated some segments of the population. Personal life and ideology. Little is known about Traoré's personal life, as he maintains a tightly controlled public image. Contrary to some erroneous claims, he is Muslim, not Christian, and his religious beliefs appear to inform his sense of duty to his nation. His ideology draws heavily from Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader from 1983 to 1987, who championed Marxist and Pan-Africanist principles. Traoré's speeches emphasize self-reliance, anti-imperialism, and African unity, resonating with a generation frustrated by neo-colonialism. His media-savvy approach, including carefully curated appearances in military fatigues and a reserved demeanor, has bolstered his image as a man of the people. However, critics argue that his reliance on pro-government propaganda and suppression of free press undermines his democratic credentials. Legacy and future prospects. At 37, Ibrahim Traoré remains a polarizing figure. His supporters view him as a revolutionary leader, akin to Sankara, who has restored hope and dignity to Burkina Faso. His economic reforms, focus on local resources, and defiance of Western institutions have inspired a new wave of Pan-Africanism across the continent. Posts on X reflect this admiration, with users praising his survival of assassination attempts and his bold policies. However, his critics highlight the persistent security crisis, authoritarian tendencies, and reliance on Russian support as potential pitfalls. The ongoing insurgency, coupled with allegations of human rights abuses, poses a significant risk to his legacy. To achieve lasting impact, Traoré must address governance challenges, strengthen institutions, and balance his anti-Western stance with pragmatic economic policies. As of May 26, 2025, Traoré's leadership continues to shape Burkina Faso's trajectory. Whether he can fulfill his vision of a self-reliant, secure, and prosperous nation remains an open question. His journey from a shy schoolboy to a revolutionary president is a testament to his ambition and resilience. But the road ahead demands navigating complex challenges in a volatile region.